Hello and welcome to the Fulhamish podcast, the show that offers an informal, sideways look at everything to do with Fulham Football Club. My name is Sammy James. Joining me on the podcast this week, I've got Farrell Monk, Ben Jarman and Jack Collins. How are we all doing?
Very well, thank you.
Dabby Doozy.
Sorry, what?
Re-record the intro.
That's a good start. We're trying to maintain this reputation as a podcast, and the first words you say are fan dabby doozy. Anyway, I'm going to move on. So it's been a frustrating week for Fulham against two newly relegated sides from the Premier League. Actually, a decent result at the Cottage against Norwich on Tuesday. 2-0 down at half-time. We came back with a spirited performance to draw 2-2, and then a trip up to the Midlands to play at Aston Villa. And it was the end of our unbeaten away run. It now means there's only one win in 10 in all competitions for Slaviša Jokanovic. It's been a very happy hunting ground for many teams. A trip to Villa Park, plenty of points and plenty of goals. Unfortunately, neither of those were in store for Fulham, as Jonathan Codger's goal was the difference, and we fell to a 1-0 defeat. Let's have a look, first of all, at Saturday's game. It was a very limp performance, only 4 shots on goal and none on target. Do you consider this to be a bit of a blip, Jack, or is there something a bit more concerning about Saturday's performance long term?
I think that we were limp is a good word, actually, something to describe Saturday, but I'm going to put it back to the point that I don't think you can have a fulcrum of McDonald and Parker, which doesn't offer a creative, outlet in that and allow us to spread. And I thought Scotty Parker was brilliant again, and shouts out to Scotty Parker. But apart from that, I just don't think that midfield fulcrum provides enough dynamism to push us forward and push us into a creative and developing side. And actually, I've been reading some reports today about the Fulham game, and quite a lot of people were not complimentary, but reasonably acute in their descriptions of us, saying that we didn't play badly and that we defended well and we kept possession well and all of these things. But it comes down to the fact that we made a stupid error, and it didn't look like either team were going to score unless it was a wonder goal or an error. And I think that that's what it comes down to. If we're going to play like that, we can't then make defensive errors. If we're going to go there and play for a nil draw, which is fine, going away to Villa, who are newly relegated and haven't lost at home this season, isn't the worst idea in the world, but then you can't be making stupid mistakes. So,
Do you think we did play for the 0-0? Was that quite obvious?
No, I don't think so. It's interesting that Jack actually pointed out how, people who probably went at that game wouldn't actually recognise that we were actually really good in possession for a significant proportion of that game. And that is really good to see. However, there is absolutely no link in between defence, our defensive midfielders and attack at all whatsoever. It was really frustrating to see that we'd pass it around really, really confidently at the back and Villa couldn't get anywhere near us, but trying to get it forward, we couldn't because our front four were so far away from them. It was ridiculous. They spent most of the game holding hands with their defenders. No one wanted to come forward and pick it up. Piazzon and Aluko were way out the game, and it kind of meant that when we actually wanted to get the ball forward because one of our fullbacks or one of the defenders ran out of space, they would just have to lump it forward. And a couple of times we did create an attack from it, but we had the ball for a lot of the time. We could have created a hell of a lot more if we could actually link up there.
100%.
Yeah, I agree with that. The length that the team is playing with each other is normally much closer than that, and I think we saw that link up at Norwich, especially between Johansson and Martin. They link up very, very well together, and we didn't see any of that from any of the attacking players or forward players from Fulham this weekend.
It's got to be one hell of a pass to
there's a lot
to
of
get
space
through there,
lines.
isn't there?
Yeah, exactly that. And there's a lot of space in between the lines. But I think some credit has to go to Villa, obviously under a new manager.
It was a bad time to play them.
Yeah, bad time to play them. They're obviously getting some sort of a boost from having a manager that actually knows what he's doing on a day-to-day. Sort of Di Matteo doesn't have, for me, enough of an idea what to do defensively. He's sort of like an attack-minded coach, but then...
How does he keep getting jobs?
Good. Well, because he won the Champions League with Chelsea with someone else's squad, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think if you look back at the full 90 minutes, if you're subscribed to Fulham TV, which we may well be.
$2.99.
It quite clearly shows that Villa are much more organised than some of the opposition that we've played against, which is obviously like a trademark of Steve Bruce Bruce team for me. I think they're trying to save face a little bit. Their opening start to the season has been great at all, and this is, for them, a very credible result, especially against our away form.
Steve Bruce has taken 2 weeks to do that, to get really well organised and be able to sort of start beating teams when, we obviously had a really good start to August and then it's kind of fallen over. But Slaviša's been there now for, 9 months or so now. You'd expect him now to have a well-drilled team.
I would agree with that, but I think the positive that we are seeing from Slaviša is that we do have an identity, and it's a clear identity that we see week in, week out, whether that's, as Don mentioned last week, the setup that we have away from home, in that we have a clear identity to hold a possession of the ball. We've had that since the word go, which clearly shows that we're working on something on the training ground. And like Dom also rightly pointed out, that we saw this weekend, that we do tend to expose ourselves out of possession, and our fullbacks and keeper are exposed quite a lot.
But is there much point having 66% possession if you do absolutely nothing with it?
I think there's a point to be had on that exact note, which is that I read an article this weekend by Ollie Holt, who used to be the Mirror's chief football writer and now writes for the Mail on Sunday, that was about Guardiola's losses and victories and failures and successes, and he said that he'd rather watch 1,000 Guardiola failures where his teams try and get the ball down, play possession football and try and get through teams rather than closing out Mourinho style for a 0-0 draw and parking the bus. And he said he'd rather watch 1,000 of those than one dismal, nicked it 1-0 at the end, sort of English mentality victory. And I think he's got a point in that the game is changing, and I think that as some teams become more expansive, others are going to have to close up, shore up, and try and play in a different system. And I think that you always look to, especially at Fulham, where we have a history of playing good football under Tagana, under Hodgson. We played good possession football and we kept the ball well. And I think that that's in our mentality as a club, I think that there's nothing to be sneered at there. Obviously, we need to do more with it. I don't think that anyone's suggesting by any means that Fulham are doing enough. It's not enough to keep 66% and have no shots on goal. But at the same time, I think you're building the foundations of something that eventually could become something special. And
I mean, from youth groups upwards, it's quite clear that we're trying to play some sort of possession football.
Yeah.
We're trying to play out the back where possible. But I think, to your point, with regards to Guardiola and Ollie Holt and the sort of admiration for possession football, if we look at the world as it is now, especially the footballing world, I've got some notes that yesterday Marseille played PSG. They had 28% possession, no shots on target, no shots registered at all. Leicester won the league last year with just 43% average possession. Yeah. Rotherham this weekend had 22% possession against Reading and only lost in the last minute. It's a case now that I think that football's moving away from... You get teams that are more comfortable in possession like Fulham, but then you get teams that are absolutely happy to sit back and counter. And for me now, if you look at the way the Champions League's going, look at the way the Europa League's going, how the top teams in the Premier League are now playing and the Championship, it's that counter is key now, and the counter is king, and possession is no longer as desired as it was. And I'd rather watch 1,000 Guardiola games, don't get me wrong. But for me, the harsh reality is that now Championship football and football in general is a counter-attacking game. It's
and
no
surely
possession.
Someone like Steve Bruce would have looked at tapes of Fulham and go, let them have the ball. Let them have it in their half. They can stay there as long as they want because they're not going to do anything with it. Don't try and rush in and make them play. I sound like Farrell on the sidelines for his football team. And that's kind of what they did. Go on, have it in your half. It's
this
fine.
Seems to be every game against Fulham over the past 2 or 3 years, and every team do it against us. Every team, and it's become sort of it's like an England kind of syndrome because our England team can definitely hold the ball really well. We've got some amazing footballers, but we've become kind of easy to play against because we do play that possession football so well, but it's just not incisive enough.
Yeah, the incision is something that we do lack, definitely. I 100% agree with that. Our transitions through the midfield are very slow. Correct. Whether that's just because of Parker and McDonald and not your boy Stefan Johansson.
I like Johansson. I just like to see him maybe in the deeper role. And I know he was good against Norwich, but I don't think that... I think if you have Johansson pushed on, then you have to have someone like LVC in there who's going to link up those attack and defence because... those players don't come short. Aluko and Piazon are never going to come short.
See,
and I don't really want them to come short, to be honest.
This is what really changed against Norwich, and this was the kind of frustrating thing going from Norwich to Villa, that Norwich, Jukanovic obviously recognised that we weren't getting the ball up to the front four as often, and we were getting really exposed on the wide, that he actually pulled Aluko and Piazon back. They both got involved in the game a lot more. Piazon turned into a different player. His work rate went through the roof because all of a sudden he was actually involved in play a lot more, and he was actually not only actually got the ball a lot more, he was actually winning tackles a lot more because he was actually where the play was, as opposed to trying to be as close to Chris Martin. And that made Johansson push forward a bit more, and he was able to play it off Martin so much easier.
Tactically, so much can be said for the gap in between defence and the front 4-5 as it is. As you say, Farrell, it's much easier to play together as a cohesive unit if you're all within, say, 25, 30 yards of each other. And we see it with all the great teams. Barca play rarely more than 35 yards apart, and it's so difficult to get the front players involved if there's a huge gap in between. And we saw that at Villa. We were limp, like you say, and against Norwich we brought them back, and look how much we...
exactly. And, to actually play like a really good, solid 40-yard pass along the ground is a lot more difficult than it looks, especially even in championship football. If say you're a midfield player, you've got to know that there is one person within 20 yards of you, that you don't even have to think about it, rather than having to sort of take a touch, look up and, oh God, he's a million miles away, I'm going to have to turn around and play it back. And that's probably why we have seen quite a few mistakes from Button, because he's obviously a good footballer, but he gets the ball so much that when he does make a mistake, it gets so much more exposure than sort of a Parker making a bad pass or a Johansson making a bad 100%. Pass.
Let's move on to that goal, because that was my next point, and you've nicely brought us on to that. So it was a back pass from Maddle to Button. He took a very heavy first touch, played it straight to Albert Adoma, who I remember tearing us apart last season for Middlesbrough. I was quite happy when I saw, because he didn't start.
No, he came off the bench.
Yeah. And... Adoma's crossed it into Codger, and actually, Codger had a lot to do there. And it's a great finish. Not sure about Sigurdsson's defending.
That was
he just put his hands up and was worried about being kicked, I think.
Yeah, I think, to be fair to him, he was trying to cover Button, but like you said, there's no bravery in there. You'd go head first, wouldn't you? He would if he was playing for Iceland.
Yeah.
Viking.
So it's poor from Button, but... I think the keeper debate has been ravaging on from that, obviously. Mistake. You cannot deny Button made a mistake there.
Correct.
But also, Button did make 2, 3, maybe even 4
one from the free kick was really good.
Top-class saves during that game. And he also has proven himself to be a good shot stopper. But I think we've said it for weeks that he is an accident waiting to happen, because he looks nervous in controlling the ball. But then again, he gets the ball as this kind of sweeper keeper role much more than an ordinary keeper would. So can all the blame really lie at the feet, excuse the pun, of Button? Or, is it actually the way that Slav plays in trying to use the keeper so much? Once in a while, they're going to make a mistake.
I think it's coupled with the fact that we can't actually do that transition from defence midfield, which means Button gets the ball a hell of a lot more than he should do, as any keeper. We've been talking about that it was 66% possession at the weekend away from home, which is a hell of a lot against two teams where you'd expect that it should be 50-50.
Yeah.
But why should the goalkeeper have as many touches in game that he should do that aren't saves or picking the ball out of the net?
Yeah. I mean, would you?
Not.
Yeah.
Would you drop him for Bettinelli for Huddersfield?
Would I drop him for Bettinelli? No, I like the idea of Bettinelli playing. I think the Button's a better keeper. I really do. I think he's a better shot stopper. I don't know if Bettinelli's distribution is that much better, especially out of feet, because, we don't know that because we've never played this style of football with Betts in goal. We've never played the ball that much, and I think Button has a better command of his area. I think he's a better shot stopper.
This is like a Bravo Joe Hart conversation going
really
on.
There is a lot of similarities to it.
We are just like Man City.
Yeah, basically
in disguise.
Then again, you saw John Stones defending on Sunday. I've definitely seen that a few times down the years. What do you think, Ben?
I think for me that that goal that he conceded at the weekend is, in my opinion, completely his fault. If you're going to be a footballer and you have to be comfortable on your feet, and that first touch is something that you probably see at FC Brentford from Farrell at the weekend. I don't know. I think that wasn't a great, obviously, example of how you should be a distributing keeper. Fulham traditionally have a really bad history with distribution from keepers. I remember Schwarzer is not particularly good at kicking the ball out. The only one we've had in a very recent history that I can ever remember being good at distributing is Stekelenburg, who was very good with his feet. But in answer to your question, I think I'd side with Jack here. I think I would keep Button in.
And also, it can dent a keeper's confidence massively to just be dropped straight after one mistake.
Malone-esque.
Yeah, and you're out. Ross McCormack, I think a lot of the pre-match talk was about him. He actually only came on as a substitute. He seems to be a bit out of favour at the moment at Villa. Their striking options are incredible, really. You consider the amount of firepower they have up front.
I think behind Newcastle, you have to look at Villa as being the strongest squad in the league, and the squad is, directly underperforming. And I feel like we'll start to see that change now under Bruce.
Although Norwich aren't too far behind, they've got enough. Well. They've got enough players around to actually have Stephen Naismith on the bench.
Yeah.
But he came on. He got a warm reaction from the fans. There was a few boos, and that's justified because really, for 2 seasons, he put his heart on the line for Fulham. He scored so many goals, and I think it's undoubted that we probably would be talking about League One fixtures had it not been for Ross McCormack in the past couple of seasons.
I think that Ross McCormack will eventually go down, not quite as necessarily as a Fulham great, but as one of Fulham's best players. And I think that if you actually look at the stats, Ross McCormack's goal scoring record was better than Louis Saha's at Fulham, and his chance creation was also higher than Malbronk's. I think was the stats I was looking at the other day. Article coming soon. But yeah, so I think that Ross McCormack will ultimately and eventually go down as a Fulham, one of Fulham's best players.
What's the Championship though? I mean,
it was, but so was Saha's for the majority.
Yeah.
To be honest, the first set of goals were all Championship as well. So I think that there's a way you can say that he was playing against weaker opposition, but you can also say that he had a weaker team around him.
Oh, definitely.
And so I think that there's that swings and roundabouts a bit. But I think that he will, and I think that it's good that Ross got a warm reception and he came over to the fans afterwards and he clapped, and I think that there's no...
I mean, I liked that he was in the club. I think it was the Newcastle game where he was in the club shop buying a Fulham kit for one of his kids. Yeah. So he's clearly got an affiliation with the club. He's just obviously got a desperate dream to play in the Premier League, one that's fading rapidly, surely now with Villa. I mean, they could pull it back under Steve Bruce. It'd be a hell of a run for them to make it up, and I still don't think they're fixed. I mean, they're doing better under Bruce, but I think it's not going to be they're going to win every game from now on. You probably imagine that Ross is never going to quite realise that ambition to play in the Premier League unless he just signs for a newly promoted team and probably is on the bench. He's certainly not going to be the star man.
There is a part of me that would like to see Ross in the Premier League.
Yeah, so would I.
He's obviously done all these moves at the risk of upsetting a lot of people to actually realise that dream of playing in the Premier League.
I think he was quite candid in his interviews post joining Villa, and he was like, look, I went to Fulham and quite a lot of the experienced players left and then we lost, and then he was like, I always put my heart on the line. He was like, to be honest, I thought we were going to be challenging for promotion. We ended up fighting relegation. He's like, I gave my all every time we came on the pitch. He's like, when the offer came in, Jukanovic said to me, if you want to go, please do it early so that we can rebuild our squad. And he said, I'd like to go and give it a crack. And, he must be a guy that he didn't end up going to Norwich, to be honest. But at the same time, I don't begrudge him that move. I think that's fair enough. And it wasn't... He said, look, I wanted to play in the Premier League. He's always been quite honest about that.
And we did very well financially, somehow making a profit out of him for the amount of goals
Big
we got.
Mike Rigg coming in with the goods.
Legend.
Let's move on to Norwich. Another striker was at the centre of debate in that one, which was Chris Martin. Finally, maybe starting to see what we have signed after what's really been a lacklustre start since his loan move / kind of permanent move. I don't really understand the technicalities there from Derby. And a good point, considering the circumstances, 2-0 down at half-time to the league leaders. It was looking fairly bleak. And they'd won 6 of their past 7, and that only one they didn't win. They were beating Newcastle at St James's Park with the 90th minute gone, and then Newcastle pulled off an incredible comeback to win that 4-3. Would be good to have a little bit of a chat about the penalties. The first one for me, both given away by Scott Malone, looked fairly nailed on. It was a bit rash from Malone. That second one, though, seemed very dubious.
I've watched it over a few times, and I still cannot tell where the foul was and where the contact was made, or I don't know if the Norwich player who's the one that went down for
Cameron
it.
Jerome.
Jerome. He doesn't go down easily at all. I still failed to see where the contact was made. He might have tripped over his own feet. He might have tripped over Malone's feet. Might have been a slight touch, but the fact that we can probably talk about this for a long, long time kind of shows that it probably definitely wasn't a penalty.
It's just incredibly soft in terms of like giving that decision. Jerome's not a small guy by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, to go over that easily, if you look at the trajectory of the ball as well, it looks like it's going over his head. So even if he is going to jump, it's some distance over his head. So if you put yourself in the shoes of the referee, you have to think, is Jerome going to play the ball? Well, probably no, because it's too hard for him. And has there been any contact? Well, again, the answer is yes, but it's very minimal. So, the letter of the law should state no, it shouldn't be, because he's not going to be able to play the ball.
Well, that's not how the law goes, unfortunately.
Here comes Farrell, the referee.
I mean,
little black book's coming out.
if he decides just to trip him up and the ball's like nowhere even close, then it's still a foul. Like the same way that if the ball was one side of the pitch and defender punches striker in the face, it's a free kick all that way over there.
Well, fair enough.
It's a soft penalty, a very soft penalty. I think that if it had been the other way round, we would have all been calling for it.
Yeah.
So there's that to consider. But no, I agree. On a
You're calling us fickle?
On a perfectly neutral note. Fulham fans, fickle.
But it was a great comeback, though, in the second half. And as I mentioned, Chris Martin had a particularly good game, a deserved man of the match, I think. And no one can really deny that. We're starting to finally see what he can bring into this side. And Ben, apart from the fact that he didn't score against Villa, your prediction / your thesis that he would bring up a bit of a scoring streak seems to come true.
Yeah, well, I think that he will get rolling, and that he's creating more chances now than he did beforehand. So that's obviously an encouraging sign. And one thing we notice about Martin when I looked at his record is that although the goals do come consistently, he also weighs in with a few assists as well, and obviously creates a fair amount of chances. But I think like part of Martin's obviously breaking his Fulham duck and now getting a few more goals and assist making under his belt is probably down to the chemistry of the other people around him. And for me, what's particularly clear is his chemistry he's got with Johansson. Because if you look back at those Norwich highlights or the 90 minutes on Fulham, FC.com, you can see that consistently those two link. Johansson brings it out of the midfield, Martin will either turn and spin and Johansson will play him in, as I think we saw for the second goal. Or he'll come short and he'll play it off to someone else. I think them two seem to have some sort of really good relationship in there, which adds to how good we are going forward.
What was really good for the second goal was Martin's movement. He completely lost his marker and gave him the space to sort of pick it up, drive, have the shot, goal.
Yeah, one thing I've got noticed down about him is that obviously you asked us in your pre-pod notes is something about Chris Martin. What do we think so good about him? And it's just his mobility versus someone like Matt Smith, who I don't know how or why anyone could justify Matt Smith being included in the starting 11, just my opinion.
Completely agreed.
His mobility for a guy of his size and strength is actually very impressive. And I don't know if it's just me, but I find him that he's quite deceptively quick, whether that's just because of his movement, allowing him to get into those gaps.
I think it might be a case of that. It's like that second goal. I mean, it looked easy. It was like, oh, he's got so much space, it's poor defending. But it was just great movement from Chris Martin. And that's what a natural predator, a natural striker has in him, and clearly Chris Martin has got that in the locker.
He's an intelligent footballer, and I think that that's something that we've necessarily lacked up front as like a vocal point. Whereas, obviously Ross was an intelligent footballer, but also sat back. I think that just that pivot to have and be able to play it in and not worry about him, heading the ball to an opponent, for example, or trying to put the ball back towards a Fulham player instead of sort of assuming that people are going to flick off him is something that we do. And I do see, when Smith comes on, one, we start to play horrible long ball football, but also I don't think I've ever seen Matt Smith head the ball to another Fulham player. Like, I really don't. He just, for a man who wins a fair amount of his own headers, and maybe not as much as he should do, being 6'6" and an absolute tank, but he really doesn't hit another Fulham player very often.
I just think because we've seen it a few times earlier on this season when we have tried to go long ball because we're behind and it goes up to Matt Smith, but we just don't know how to play long ball football because it goes up to Matt Smith, he wins it goes into a good area and there's no one within like 30 yards of him, and that is just so simple. It's ridiculous.
I don't know why we resort to it every time when we're losing. It's let's just go long ball. We're not set up, we haven't got the players, we don't, obviously I doubt they even train how to play long ball, yet suddenly they think there's 10 minutes left, let's just let's drop all plans and tactics that we had to break down this team and just play a way we never play.
But
and
also, there's no point doing that unless you're going to switch the formation and go something like 4-1-3-2 and leave another man up there to stay with him, with the three still attacking behind him. There's no point having a point like Matt Smith because there's not going to be anyone there. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think we saw from Norwich that when we really get in the groove, like we did that second half, our play is very neat. It can be very cutting at times. And it's just when we're at our absolute best, when you see that everything that Jukanovic is putting on the training ground is pulling off. And against a squad like Norwich's as well, that's pretty impressive. I mean, they're like an in-betweener squad, aren't they, really? They're not good enough to stay in the Premiership, but should win the Championship or be at least promoted. They're like a team of in-betweeners, aren't they?
Which one's Jay?
Stephen Naismith. And Terry loves a special brew, can't he?
And it was interesting. There was a Derby Telegraph poll. Of 4,200 Derby fans got involved in this. 75% said they would like Chris to be recalled from loan. I'm not sure. I'm sure that's
They can't.
No, is that possible?
No.
I thought there was going to be a boring conversation about a Telegraph poll.
Oh, right.
Very good. Very good.
So clearly they want him back, although then you see Derby's form. I think they
want anyone back.
Yeah, literally anyone that can help them. They lost to Huddersfield in the final minutes on Saturday, and now our next opponents at the Cottage. It's going to be a very difficult game against David Wagner's side. They've been the surprise package, certainly maybe to the untrained eye. I think a lot of people that really know Huddersfield and pundits were actually expecting big things from them, but I think maybe the average pundit would have just thought, Huddersfield, probably relegation. But they have really turned on the star this season. They seem to have this incredible team spirit, lots of late goals, and there seems to be this energy around Huddersfield. They've had a bit of a blip. They lost to Preston a week ago, but again, they won against Derby in the final minutes at the John Smith Stadium on Saturday. They're going to be a very, very tough side for Fulham to face. It'd be a decent scalp if we can manage to get anything from them on Saturday, and that sounds really depressing.
They've got a good core of loanees. Casey Palmer off Chelsea, who, if everyone wasn't raving about Tammy Abraham, I think everyone would be raving about Casey Palmer. And Aaron Moy, who's somewhat of a revelation in the Championship.
I know a couple of the guys on Twitter that I follow are quite interested in Australian football and said that he's absolutely incredible, and if anything, should in the next year or so may actually be starting for City, which is quite impressive considering I think he's 24 or 25 now. Yeah. So
he's a bit older than most of the old loanees that go out, but he seems to be finding his feet, and he looks a really good player.
Yeah, we're gonna have to be on our best, but it'd be nice we've got to get back to some sort of form, because now the stats are starting to get a little concerning. 1 win in 10 is more than really just a blip. That is pretty terrible form. We can't keep that up for the rest of the season.
Yol was sacked for 1 in 12. Let's put it that way.
Jeez. Okay. Well, that's the Visa. I think he's definitely starting to get a little bit of pressure. The heat must be on a bit, and I'm sure we won't do anything rash. But then again,
Who knows in the modern game?
who knows at all?
I don't know
Fulhamish against
if we-
modern football.
Yeah, I don't know if we will do that because we kind of got to the point where we were just like, okay, this manager hasn't won 1 in 10, get rid of him. Oh, this hasn't won 1 in 10, get rid of him. And it's sort of like when you start to get rid of managers, it like I saw an article in United earlier about them just getting rid of managers and not thinking it's the players or the club. When you start to get rid of managers and players at the drop of a hat, it really becomes ingrained in the club that they're used to losing, they're used to change. I think if we support Jokanovic, we support his instructions, his implementation of an identity and a system, we can go places. We just need to let it bed in. Nothing clicks in a day or so.
Alex Ferguson, when he left, he banged on so much about one of the key things that factored into his success was consistency, and that they had Ferguson for a few years, and like to start off with, and there were sort of questions about his future, and they sort of kept him on, and obviously it went quite well for them after this.
Sort of. Yeah, all right.
And when they got Moyes in, and like it didn't obviously go so well to start off with, and he kept thinking, look, consistency, and all of a sudden they've,
Been through 3 managers.
Yeah, exactly, and it's how could they go against what Ferguson had kind of said? They should take that man's word as gospel, really, and they've kind of gone against that, and now it's kind of it's a case of, if they're not going to listen, if Alex Ferguson and United have done that, then they've just become like any other team that do sack the manager at the drop of a hat, like Sunderland or Newcastle or whatever, And
if we did sack Jokanovic, we're very much in danger of becoming added to that list of teams.
I think we are already.
Yeah,
Do you think?
I would very much like it if we did not become like Sunderland.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not, as I said, I don't think we are far off already. I wasn't actually really suggesting that I think it's on the cards, but the form. Sometimes you can't hide form after a while, and I think he's got a lot of lives, Slaviša, and I'm happy about that. But if it became 1 in 20, then sometimes the fat lady starts to sing, and there's not a lot you can do about it, whether you have the support of the entire club or none of the club. Like the form starts to take over. So
would you wait until, say, the form does go really badly, but would you wait until the end of the season, unless it's like really dire situation?
I would certainly hope that there's no more mid-season changes. I don't think it's good for anyone in any situation, and I think we saw it no more plainer than Kit last season after sacking Kit, which at the time I thought was the right decision. And then what was that?
I stand by that being the right decision.
I definitely. I don't.
Not maybe the right
Really?
decision, but was the timing right?
No, I think
we
right
were
decision.
diabolical on the
We were
kit.
we were 10th at the time.
we were.
I mean, we
rubbish on
ended the
kit.
season 19th.
Well, we're 2 points worse off this season than we were this time last year under Kit. I believe. I'm
Yeah, I
right
think
on
you're
that.
right.
I
I think-
certainly know we've got less points.
Yeah, I think you're right. I stand by that being the right decision.
Yeah.
I fully do. We didn't have the time as a club to afford Kit the development that he needed as a manager to bring us forward.
We were getting wins. We were getting results.
We were getting the odd win here and there in random places. There was no consistency, no style, no integrity about the club. Like, we didn't know what we were. We were relying on McCormack magic to get us points, and I stand by that. And that's what saved us ultimately, I think, last season. But
I would say the performances under Kit before he got sacked were a lot better than they have been, apart Norwich aside.
fair enough. Well, we'll agree to disagree on that one, I think, Farrell.
So let's finish on a new little feature that I think we're going to be running for a few weeks. Now, all the best ideas start in the pub.
Correct.
So there is hope for this one. Farrell, on a napkin paper with a pencil, started to draw up a Forgotten Fulham XI in a pre-match pub session. Was that before the QPR game?
Probably the nicest part of the day.
I thought we promised we weren't going to talk about it anymore.
Some random home
Get the
game.
shakes.
And the idea of this Forgotten Fulham XI, I'll let Farrell explain it, because I think it was his baby.
I don't know how it started, but I think we just randomly started talking about a particular former player. I can't remember who, and there were a few people like, oh God, yeah, I forgot about him. And they're like, where did he play? Where did he go? and that kind of stuff. And then we sort of decided to build a team of forgotten Fulham players, the ones that, only played a handful of times for the clubs, the ones that some people might remember and other people would go, oh, I don't really remember him. Who did he play? When did he play? And other people go, oh yeah, I totally forgot about him.
Well, I think we've already mentioned a lot on this show. There's been mentions already for Tony Callio, Ahmad Elric. If you want to see this, we actually have the exact photo evidence of Farrell's napkin. If you go to @Fulhamish Pod, it is there in all its glory with his team crossed out, because I didn't want to influence anyone on Twitter's thinking. I wanted them to be original and think of their own players. And so we're going to start today with the goalkeeper and the defence, and try and pick the back five. And then in future shows going forward, we'll then pick maybe a midfield trio or quartet. That's a decision we've got to make.
Yeah.
And then do we go with the two up top, or do we go with the Christmas tree, the 4-1-3-2? There's so many options. But today we'll settle on a back five.
Yeah. Will we get sacked for a bad decision?
We could do.
Not for a couple of games.
a 1 in 10.
Yeah.
If we've got the back end of the club, it's fine. Fellas, let's move on to goalkeeper first. There was a few mentions on Twitter. One for Pascal Zubabula. I certainly would have him up there. Any other suggestions for goalkeeper?
Did Zubabula play?
No, but he used to come down to the Hammersmith end before every game and clap everyone, and everyone used to clap him back. So
he moved into goalkeeper coach, didn't he, after he retired?
Yeah.
So are they allowed in if they haven't played at all, Farrell, as rule master in chief?
No.
Okay. So they have
actually, mate, I'm going to check that, because I think he might have played a League Cup game.
I think he played.
I've got a League Cup game. Yeah, I've got an inkling he probably played the League Cup game.
Did he
was our second keeper. It wasn't like he was the old, down the pecking order. He was on the bench every single game.
Yeah. He must have some sort of record there.
Maybe an FA Cup tie.
He must have come on.
Did you play against Spurs in that FA Cup tie?
No, in that Spurs game, none of us can remember apart from you.
No, that was Premier League.
A mysterious game that only Ben remembers.
No, Farrell remembers it.
Which one was this?
Carl Walker punched the ball off the line.
I remember it. I am definitely irked by that.
My man.
Me and Jack got amnesia from that one. No memory.
I've blanked out. It's another one of those blank out PTSD games.
Any other goalkeeping mentions for the Forgotten Fulham?
Jan Lastukva.
Oh, I had him.
He still plays up in Scotland. Jan Lastukva.
Does he?
Yeah.
He played for Hearts for a while?
For ages, yes. I've got one. Martin Herrera.
Oh, lovely Spanish accent.
Who played for Alaves in the final of the UEFA Super Cup
against Liverpool,
where they lost 5-4. And then was signed by Premier League outfit Fulham, and then he only made 2 appearances.
Was one against Spurs,
in the
FA Cup.
Carl Walker handballed it off the line.
I think I remember that was he came on because, was it Mate Taylor got sent off?
Yeah.
And he had to try and save a penalty from Teddy Sheringham.
I believe so, yeah.
Failed, we'd imagine.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. one of the legendary Argentinians, the other one obviously being Facundo Savar.
The man with the mask.
Yeah.
So who we going in goal? I think it's a cross between Pascal Zubabula and Martin Herrera here.
Oh, Ross Flitney.
Oh, Ross Flitney.
Absolute
That's a
legend.
left field shout.
I don't think Ross Flitney ever played a game, so I think he might be banned.
He didn't.
No.
Who are we selling on here? Someone needs to take the jersey. There's a sub bench. Don't forget. There is.
I had Wes Fotheringham in there, who came through the Fulham Academy, sat on the bench for a while, and then went off to Rangers eventually. And he's been the Rangers goalkeeper since they went down to Division 3 and became back as a fake football club. He's still their goalkeeper.
Yeah,
and he was beaten by our own old boy, Moussa Dembele, again at the weekend.
Lovely finish.
Brilliant finish. Gorgeous.
Little back heel into the net. Who are we going for? Come on, we need to make a decision here.
I'd love to vote for Herrera because it's my shout, but
I'd go for Herrera as well, because he's just that guy that, when we mention it, people will know him, but he only really played those 2 games. Yeah, exactly. So
I'm happy to.
I'm sticking him in number 1.
Can we have Pascal on the bench just because that's where he normally sat anyway?
Yeah, he warmed it for so many seasons.
Exactly. He deserves his spot on the bench.
The grooves in the Craven Cottage bench are still there from Pascal Zubabula. I worked out earlier on Twitter that his name is 27 points on a Scrabble board until someone tweeted that you can't have proper nouns on a Scrabble board, so that was a defunct point. There's always one.
Always
That
one
was
that's
Sam
spoiled
Green,
the
wasn't it?
magic.
Yeah.
Sam, you fun sponge.
Right, onto the defence before we finish, and then obviously in future games we'll move further forward. So any particular nominations, a couple from each of you?
For any particular position, Sammy?
Let's kind of neglect positions a little bit.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Let's get started.
I've got a right back proposition. Elliot Omazuzi,
Yeah.
who moved from us to Leyton Orient and then was arrested for a gang-related murder of a witness. Did 2.5 years in prison.
Well, he can be added to our Fulham prison 11,
Yeah, he's
which includes Ahmed Elric amongst others,
And John Pansel.
and John Pansel.
So we're building a lot of squads here. And I'd like to nominate him because I think that's a phenomenal one.
I think my first nomination is going to be Grigera Zdenek, I think is his first name, who came to us on a free from Juventus under Yol, and was an absolute, for me, a very, very solid, dependable right back. Not the fastest, but managed to get up and down the wing a lot. It's a good source of creativity, liked a good cross, and has probably the loudest knee snap
It was horrible.
recorded in history.
Wasn't it against Spurs as well?
No.
Carl Walker.
This has got to
It was
stop.
Carl Walker. No, I was sat probably halfway up the hammy end, and I heard his knee ligament snap, and he went out for the season, came back and tried to come back and play for us for a couple of seasons, featuring in under-21 squads as well, I believe. Unfortunately, never made it back, but he was some quality that we could have had. Unfortunately, another nomination who Jack has on his list, Stan Manilev, took his place.
He was terrible. Let's not have him in, please.
Well, someone else that I was always like to think of in a Forgotten 11, although not so forgotten, because I know a lot of people rave about him, and his Fulham career really cuts short by injury. Monsieur Jerome Bonacel, who was a fantastic left back.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
he was.
Could bomb up the wing. He had bundles of energy. He didn't stop all game. I remember, I think it was the 03-04 season, he came into the side under Coleman and was absolutely terrific. And injuries, unfortunately, a bit like Zinedine Grigera, cut him short. So I'll put him forward for nomination,
He
please.
came from Rangers as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Also, wasn't he, when he got injured, isn't that the terrible season when we tried to play Carlos Bocanegra at left back, and he was the least left back man I've ever. He literally was put there because he had a left foot.
the Dan Dad of left backs.
And he,
It's like a lot of Sunday league teams as well.
but like Bocanegra was an excellent centre half, like a really good centre half, and they tried to play him at left back, and it was all a bit bizarre. Really.
I think one season he finished our second top goal scorer, Bocanegra.
he loved goals. He loved them. So yeah, fair enough.
Farrell, who are we nominating from you, please?
I've got Nathan Ashton, who played one game under Laurie Sanchez. He was brought in by Lou Reed. Was it Lou Reed? Les Reed.
Les Reed.
Lou Reed sings
Reed's a
Perfect
singer.
Day, doesn't he?
Les Reed, he went on to manage Charlton.
Yeah, and I think he actually came from Charlton to us and brought Nathan Ashton with him, played for one game, and then we quickly shipped him off because he was, well,
Dog.
yeah.
That's what happens when you give Lou Reed power over transfers, the 70s singer.
I thought there was hope for me to become a pro footballer from that because I think he's one of the very few footballers who's even shorter than I am. So I thought, maybe there's a chance for me.
How old were you at the time when he was a transfer?
Don't know actually. Maybe 20.
Oh, there's still hope.
Vardy was playing in the non-league thing at 20.
He's got his own book now as well.
And a feature film soon to be
When
released.
Leicester win the Champions League, they're going to make a sequel as well. It's going to be Goal and Goal 2.
It's just be like the in-betweeners, but with some five-a-side put in.
It's going to be Salford City Reds all over again.
Oh, God.
I'm gonna nominate Nicky Shorey, who
Oh, yeah.
everyone actually forgets played for Fulham because he just wasn't very good. He also wore the 7 shirt, which has become slightly cursed with our defenders as they seem to get injured every time they wear the 7. Fredericks and Rossignol being two recipients of that cursed 7 as a defender shirt.
Afro Senior.
I watched one of, I think it was like the fantasy football program on Sky Sports, and they had Steve Sidwell on it, and they do a feature where they name the best 11 they've ever played with. And bearing in mind, Steve Sidwell used to play for Chelsea for a bit, nominated Nicky Shorey as his left back. And I've never seen such disbelief on Paul Merson's face, because he was just like, cross that out and put that Ashley Cole there. What are you doing? And he's like, no, Nicky Shorey, great footballer, he's great,
Good
great.
mate,
Yeah, really like him.
Like golf.
And Paul Merson was like, give me the pen. I'm gonna write Ashley Cole there for you.
Yeah, so Nicky Shorey played for Fulham. So.
On loan from Reading, was he at the time?
You know what?
Permanent.
I think it was a permanent, and I think he made about 4 appearances. So, and I'd completely forgotten that Nicky Shorey played for Fulham, and I was looking at the history of the number 7 shirt in Fulham Football Club the other day, because I have too much time, and he popped up. So there's another nomination.
Okay, so we're racking through the defenders. Ben?
My second nomination is going to be everyone's second favourite Fulham Canadian, Paul Stalteri, who we had on loan from Spurs for half a season, I believe. He only made a few appearances for us, but yeah, I'd like to nominate him. Quite sort of dependable. I think he actually scored for us quite an important goal once.
Didn't he play through quite a significant part of the Great Escape? I seem to remember maybe even playing in that final Portsmouth.
Yeah, he probably would have done. I mean, he played pretty much every game leading up to the...
Yeah, I do remember him playing against Liverpool as well.
I'm sure Thomas Radzinski would take offence to you saying that he was not everyone's second favourite Fulham Canadian.
And what about Paul Pesca-Salido?
No, I was going as that as a given for first.
We actually last week said, talking about Canadians playing for Fulham, and we'd completely forgotten about Paul Stalteri. So sorry, Paul, if you're a regular
He's
listener.
my second favourite Canadian after Radzi.
Have you got any more suggestions for the defence, Farrell?
I've got...
I sound like I'm a judge here. Any more case for the defence?
No. I've got Gabriel Zakuani.
Classic.
Who played twice for Fulham after he impressed, in inverted commas, in an FA Cup game against Peterborough. So I think Chris Coleman signed him for over £1 million.
Oh, no.
And that was a waste of money. Sorry, Gabriel, but it obviously didn't work out.
He still plays for Peterborough or Northampton now.
Northampton now. And DR Congo still.
What a player. See, maybe we should have kept him.
Yeah.
There's Adrian Leisure, I don't know how to pronounce it particularly as well, who was touted as Breda Hangeland's successor, and Billy McKinley, who I actually had on my list, but I'm not going to nominate today, who was signed when he was 36, became the reserve team manager, and he basically kept saying that Adrian Leisure was going to become the next big thing in English football.
Australian?
Yeah, an Australian, and he went out on loan to Norwich for a while. And then basically Norwich didn't want him and he didn't play. So we sent him off back to Melbourne Victory, where he's remained ever since.
He came with a very big reputation.
Yeah, major.
I recall that. Craig Waite on Twitter has come in with some suggestions. Adam Green.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
He's mentioned Tony Callier, although, us and Tony are like that. Tony follows Fulhamish Pod on Twitter.
Big fan of the podcast.
Adam Green was the Young Player of the Year in 2002.
As in Fulham Young Player. I was going to say, crikey, it didn't make it like...
PFA.
Yeah. Also, Dean Leacock.
I was looking at Dean Leacock earlier, and I found 3 links to articles on BBC website saying he was going to be the next Rio Ferdinand.
Goodness.
I should call those people out.
He played for Marseille once, I think.
Yeah?
Leacock, yeah.
He can also slot in a right back if we're short of position.
Well, someone else that can slot in
for a while.
Someone else that can slot in at right back, Robert Land, said is Freddie Storr.
Yeah, Swedish international, wasn't he?
Yeah, played under Roy Hodgson, but didn't get too many games at all. Couldn't get above Stephen Kelly in the pecking order.
That must be so bad for your confidence as a footballer. Yeah, God.
Good looking though.
Yeah, well, I think some worthy suggestions. I feel like. Can we make a final decision on the back 4 today, or do we need some time to mull it over?
So how many right backs have we got?
8.
We've got
Krugera's a right back. Stalteri's left.
Shorey's a left back.
Shorey's a left back.
Storr's a right back. Well, Storr was all across the back 4.
Storr at centre back.
There was Omazusi was there. Kristen Val, although I don't...
Kristen Val
Val's definitely got going in.
Did I say
he was also a hero?
Did we even mention Kristen Val?
No.
I don't know where I came up with Kristen Val from.
Kristen Val, I saw a last-minute equaliser against West Ham.
It was a glorious game.
That was beautiful.
Philippe Kristenval was a top quality player. He was so calm and
straight-
assured from Barcelona. He was so calm and assured on the ball, and he had Zat Nye next to him, and he made Zat Nye look unbelievable.
Now that is a skill. Adrian Leisure was another one of us. Jerome Bonacel. Well, I feel like Jerome
No,
Bonacel
I don't
is
think he's forgotten.
No, I
Too well
think-
known.
I think many people haven't forgotten that is the point.
I'd go Omatsusi,
Yeah.
Ashton at left back, and then what are the centre backs? Dean Leacock.
Zakuani, Leacock and
Zakuani,
Zakuani, Omazuzi, and who do we say left back?
Ashton.
Ashton. Right, there we are.
There we go. Jack's decided.
There we are. That
No
looks
mention
fine.
for Shorey. I like Shorey.
I like Shorey as well. He can go on the bench.
Yeah.
Can Gregera go on the bench as well?
Yeah,
please?
why not?
Well, you need two on
Physio's
the
room.
bench. Right, here we go. Gregera and Shorey on the bench. And then we've got Ashton, Leacock,
Zakuani.
Zakuani, and
Omazuzi.
Omazuzi.
It's not an easy pronunciation of that back four. Easy for you to say, Sam.
I know, you're really testing my pronunciation today. Okay, well, there we go. There's a back five sorted there. Martin Herrera, Elliot Omazusi, Gabriel Zakuani, Dean Leacock, and Nathan Ashton. I think that is a, I was about to say solid back five, but I think anything but
Yeah, exactly.
a solid back five. But certainly a good start to our Forgotten Fulham 11, and we will be carrying that on in the weeks to come. Basically, when I haven't got enough... no, I'm not going to say that.
Basically, when we all find out we hate each other.
Yeah, exactly. When we've all...
It's a good way to bring the morale back up.
Chaps, thank you very much for being on this evening's podcast. Another good one once again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
In the pipeline is a Fulhamish website, which is very exciting. And we're looking for writers for the website. So if you'd be interested in writing some previews or reviews or articles, features, specials, anything you want to write about, as long as it has got something vaguely to do with Fulham Football Club, then get in touch. Our Twitter is @FulhamishPod. We'd really like to get lots of articles up there, and it would be great for you to be involved. So if you want to do that, hit us up on Twitter, and don't forget to like the Facebook page, and you can get us on Twitter as well, and leave us a review on iTunes. We've had so many nice ones already. Don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's been lovely for you guys to give your positive feedback on this podcast.
Thanks to whoever shouted me out on iTunes. I was having a great time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there we are.
Famous, mate.
Famous.
You're going to be recognised around the Hammersmith end in absolutely no time.
That is the dream.
By voice only.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That guy sounds good.
We shall be back next week after the Huddersfield game, hopefully talking about 3 points, but you never know.